Hi there, Josh here, and welcome to Snapshots. Today we're looking at the different aspects of depth of field, so let's get to it. So the two things you really need to know about depth of field in regards to your aperture is that there's shallow depth of field and then there's deep focus. So when we talk about shallow depth of field, it's usually talking about how blurry the background and foreground is compared to your subject. And so when the depth of field is shallow, it will be very blurry and out of focus. But if you're doing deep focus is more about having more things in the image in focus. So stuff in the foreground, midground, background can be in focus at the same time depending on your lens. And how much light you have also plays into it as well. As you can see here, you can see completely through the lens. So this is a wider aperture or a lower aperture. And that's when the lens is all the way open so that more light can come through. Now when you're doing deep focus, you need to have a smaller aperture so less light is coming in, but because of that there will be more things in focus. And so usually it's a combination of playing with your aperture, but in order to have a lower aperture you need more ISO or a lower shutter speed so that it's bright enough to get a proper exposure. And when you're doing shallow depth of field, sometimes you'll need to put like an ND filter on so that you are blocking out all the light that you're putting back in, depending on when you're doing it. If you're shooting at night, usually you're just going to be wide open no matter what. And if you're shooting during the middle of the day, unless you have an ND filter, you're going to need a closed aperture. So why you'd want one or the other will depend on what you're looking for out of your image. Now, normally when you're doing street, it can be very hard to catch things quickly and have it in focus. And so one of the reasons you will want deep focus is just so that you're able to get everything in focus, or more things in focus. And that way you can be thinking more about the image you're getting than your exposure and your focus. And this is where things like zone focusing comes in, which is a previous episode, so you can go back and watch that. But yeah, it is more so that you don't have to think about things as much when you're shooting fast on the street trying to capture moments. Or it could be just because you want more things in focus in the shot, which if you've ever seen the movie Citizen Kane, that movie is famous for its deep focus photography and having things going on in the foreground, midground and background and having it all be in focus because you're kind of meant to be paying attention to each thing. With the shallow depth of field, that's more about focusing on one thing and not really the world around it. And that's why one of the reasons why you would want to use shallow depth of field is to really isolate your subject so that the person looking at your image is only paying attention to that. And there are a lot of things that come into play with that, like medium format is known for having shallower depth of field because you're using longer lenses. And so the length of your lens also plays into it. For example, if you have a wide lens, this is a 28mm, because it's such a wide lens, more things are going to be focused in it as well. The depth of field won't be as shallow, which makes it good for street, and if you just want to make sure you get more things in the shot. And even more so when you have more telephoto lenses. Like, I'm just going to reach back here. This is a 300mm lens, so the depth of field of this is going to be a lot shallower, even though it only goes to f5.6, because with medium format you are shooting on longer lenses. The 80mm is closer to the frame size of a 50mm, but because it is a longer lens, the depth of field is gonna be shallower as well. And there are also cool things you can do with depth of field with specialized lenses like a tilt shift, which is very similar to if you use a large format camera, you can kind of move the bellows a bit to the left or to the right and it'll kind of change the plane of focus, because we're used to focus being very straight on, but you can change it to be a bit more diagonal, and so everything is kind of focused on a diagonal angle instead of just here, there. And so you can do that with tilt shift lenses, or you can do that with large format, or there are some special medium format cameras like the Fuji GX 680, which also has a bellows similar to large format camera that you can play with. But this is just meant to be a small kind of video, just getting you the basics of it all in an easy to understand way. So I hope you like the video, guys. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you like to play with focus, if you have played with it in unique ways, let me know. But anyway, this has been Josh, this has been Snapshots. Just get out there, shoot some film.